The woman accidentally stumbled upon her son's nakedness. She was shocked by the scene before her.
Lo acabo de ver desnudo.
¿Y?
Tiene un miembro descomunal.
Originally, women and husbands were consanguineous marriages. Their family had a legend that children born of incest would grow pigtails. However, her son didn't grow a pigtail, but instead grew another strange thing. To dispel her doubts, the woman had her son come for divination, but the diviner, upon learning of her son's extraordinary talent, had already developed ulterior motives.
¡Qué bárbaro!
At this moment, the boy's mother was still unaware of the trouble this divination would bring. Many years ago, in a bustling cockfighting arena, a man named Jose had an incredibly strong fighting rooster. In just 3 seconds, he defeated the opposing chicken. Seemingly indignant, the opponent suddenly mocked Jose. After all, he had not managed to get his wife Ursula pregnant over the years. This struck a nerve with Jose. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that he couldn't. His wife always wore that chastity belt, which left Jose with no opportunity. And all of this stemmed from a ridiculous family legend. The rumor was that children born from incest would be monsters with pigtails. So on their wedding night, Ursula's mother presented her with the chastity belt to ensure Ursula could never be intimate with Jose. Now, the opponent had the audacity to mock him about it. Jose challenged the man to a duel. The man didn't believe that Jose dared to fight him. He immediately accepted the challenge. Enraged, Jose rushed back home. Under the bewildered gaze of his wife Ursula, grabbed a spear and charged out again. Before the other man could react, he was killed by Jose's spear. This incident drew an investigation from above. But after understanding the whole story, the mayor concluded that Jose and the man were engaged in a legitimate duel, not a deliberate murder. Thus, Jose wasn't held accountable. Although there was no legal punishment for Jose, a strange force arranged for another kind of punishment. That night, Jose suddenly saw the guy he had killed appear in front of him. The wound on the man's neck was still oozing blood. He was using a bundle of reeds to staunch the bleeding, while staring intently at Jose. This made Jose feel a little scared. Afterward, Jose found that the ghost of the man was always following him, no matter where he went or what he did. It stared intently at him. Jose could no longer tolerate it. He decided to leave the town with his wife Ursula, to seek the rumored sea. His idea resonated with some residents of the town, who decided to leave with him. So, not long after, a group of several dozen people set out from the town. Before they departed, Ursula's parents gave Jose a box of gold coins as travel money. However, before they reached their destination, these coins were useless. Along the way, they survived by hunting and gathering. Although life was somewhat difficult, the thought of the dream sea, and being free from the persistent ghost, made Jose no complaints in his heart. Moreover, without Ursula's parents' supervision, not long after, Ursula became pregnant. However, she was a bit anxious, often dreaming of piglets turning into her child. Fortunately, it was just her own fears. When the child was born, he showed no monstrous traits, which eased Ursula's worries a little. The child was named ACA. More than 2 years later, the group continued to advance, and finally left the mountains. They saw the vast, boundless marshlands, where the land was fertile, and a good gathering spot. Many people planned to settle here, but Jose still thought of continuing toward the sea. So, under Jose's leadership, everyone moved forward for several more months. During this time, Jose felt extremely tired. One day, while resting, Jose suddenly had a strange dream. Although it was still in the marshlands, the scenery around him changed rapidly. Before long, a large and prosperous city appeared before him. Jose vaguely felt that this city was called Macondo. Then, he woke up from the dream. Jose recalled his previous dream, and decided to establish a town here. He named it Macondo. So, the people who followed Jose settled down completely. More than a month later, mud houses and huts sprang up. Although they looked very simple, they carried the people's beautiful hopes. Thus, the legend of Macondo began. A few months later, the newly established town welcomed its first guests. It was a caravan of gypsies. The leader is called Malara. They brought various unusual products that amazed the residents of Macondo. Among them, the most magical was an item known as the eighth wonder of alchemy. Upon seeing such a marvelous item, Jose immediately had an idea. Ignoring his wife's advice, he exchanged 2 sheep at home for 2 huge magnets for the caravan. However, Malara saw through his intentions, and candidly told Jose that this item could only attract iron, not gold or anything like that. However, Jose refused to heed the warning, and insisted on the exchange. At this moment, he was still fantasizing about using this treasure to find other riches, but just a few days later, Jose was completely disappointed. He took 2 people and searched the mountains, but found nothing but a skeleton. There were no other gains. Naturally, Jose was unwilling to accept this, but Ursula's advice quickly calmed him down. Jose knew that Malara had not deceived him. This item couldn't lead to other treasures. So, he found Malara to ask for his sheep back. Malara hit it off with him at once, not only agreeing to the return request, but even including 2 gifts, which were a compass and some ancient maps. This made Jose feel as if he had struck gold. He once again had thoughts of searching for the sea. Every night, Jose observed the sky using the compass, and when he felt the time was right, he invited others to set out with him. Only 2 companions were willing to follow him, but Jose didn't feel disheartened. He believed that once he found the sea, everyone would follow him. After an unknown period of searching, Jose actually found a stranded sailboat, and followed its trail to see the vast and boundless sea. Jose excitedly brought this news back to Macondo, hoping that Ursula and the others would join him at the seaside. However, Ursula had already developed feelings for the town. At her pleading, Jose also gave up on the idea of going to the seaside. Life returned to a state of calm once again. Amidst the daily chores, Ursula gave birth to a second son, and named him Llano. On the surface, he also showed no monstrous traits, but in reality, he was a monster in a certain sense. As he grew older, the oddity became increasingly apparent.
Mamá, la olla se va a caer.
Está bien puesta, Aureliano.
As events unfolded repeatedly, Ursula realized that her second son Llano was unusual. Although ACA also had some special traits, he wasn't as bizarre. He was just very robust, able to capture adult wild boars with his young body, and certain aspects of him were rather outrageous. Ursula felt very worried, so she consulted the diviner to see if special intervention was needed. After a brief inquiry, although the diviner claimed there was no problem, she insisted that ACA come for a personal divination. The results would be more accurate that way. Not long after, ACA arrived at the diviner's hut. Upon seeing this strong young man, the diviner was almost instantly captivated. She superficially instructed him to draw a few tarot cards, but secretly, she had placed her hand on ACA's thigh, just as the eldest son was at a loss. Ursula's arrival disrupted the diviner's plans. However, after ACA returned home, he couldn't forget the sensations from earlier. As a result, he tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Wanting to clear his mind, he went to the diviner's house. She had long been waiting for him. Although ACA was naive, the diviner had another identity that could be described as experienced. With her assistance, ACA transformed from a boy into a man. This feeling makes him feel comfortable. So, ACA would often sneak to the diviner's place in the dead of night. However, he could keep it from his parents, but he couldn't hide it from his younger brother. Llano curiously asked his brother what he did every night. Thus, ACA told his brother about the matters of men. This planted a special seed in his heart, beginning to yearn for such alluring experiences. However, for now, he could only ponder. A few months later, the caravan of gypsies returned once more. Years of interaction had forged a deep friendship between Jose and Malara. So, when Malara learned that Jose was conducting experiments, he specially brought along many chemical elements. Jose utilized the items Malara brought to establish a private chemistry lab, and intended to become an alchemist, following in the footsteps of his ancestors to turn stone into gold. However, under his various operations, he not only failed to produce gold, but also ruined quite a few gold coins. This made his wife Ursula very angry. Firmly stopping Jose from his reckless pursuits, she entrusted him with taking care of the child, to prevent Jose from being too idle. Meanwhile, Ursula was busy managing the candy shop. With her exquisite skills, the candy shop's business was thriving. Thus, Jose used those inventions to bring much joy to the children. A year passed in the blink of an eye, and the caravan of gypsies arrived in Macondo once again. They brought new goods, and it was the first time Jose and his family saw something called ice. They could touch it up close for only 5 dinars. Jose and his 2 sons touched it all, and that sensation left a lasting impression on Llano. As for Jose, he was immersed in sorrow. Despite the magical performances before him, he had no mind for it at all, because he was informed that Malara had recently died in Singapore. Jose returned home, and Ursula hurriedly came to comfort him. After regaining his spirits, he decided to carry on Malara's legacy.
El mejor homenaje que le puedo hacer es no dejar morir la alquimia.
Therefore, Jose opened the long-sealed laboratory. immersing himself in the alchemical pursuits. Even when his wife gave birth to their third child, he paid little attention. The child was a girl named Ama. At this moment, Jose's experiments succeeded. He truly created a yellow metal. Jose hurriedly announced his success to his family, but was met with ACA's ridicule. Jose slapped his son, and the hot-headed ACA immediately ran away from home. He sought the gentle and alluring diviner, planning to engage in deeper interactions with her, but he soon learned that she was pregnant with his child. This was hard for ACA to accept, and he lost the desire to converse. Instead, he went out to clear his mind. Under the glow of the bonfire, the gypsy girls appeared stunningly beautiful. ACA was instantly inspired, and he intended to pursue her while also escaping. That night, he left with the gypsy caravan. By the next day, when Ursula sensed something was wrong, ACA had vanished without a trace. The townspeople searched in the direction the caravan had left, but ultimately found nothing. Even Ursula was missing. Jose had to accept the fact that his son had run away, and that his wife had disappeared. Thus, he could only care for the children, while continuing his study of alchemy. However, 5 months later, the situation took a turn. Ursula not only returned, but also brought many people with her. According to her account, Ursula had pursued the gypsy caravan all the way. Although she didn't find ACA, she arrived at another town, and recruited many new immigrants from there. These people were craftsmen from various fields, who could help them build Macondo. With their addition, Macondo developed even more rapidly. The town's economy was thriving, and even Jose's family was able to hire servants to help. Everything was heading in a positive direction, but the appearance of the diviner shattered the family's tranquility. She was holding a baby claiming to be ACA's child. Ursula and Jose already knew of their relationship, so they didn't doubt it. But ACA had already left, and the diviner had such a unique identity. The family didn't want to have too much involvement with her. Ursula agreed to raise the child, but the child would have no further connection with the diviner. After a brief hesitation, the diviner reluctantly parted with her son. Perhaps out of longing for his son, Jose also named the child ACA. Time flew by, and several years passed in a flash. The ACA who was once an infant had now grown into a teenager. He lived in the Buendia household with a special status. Although he knew his father was ACA, he didn't know the identity of his mother. He felt like a half-outsider. Not long after, a girl appeared, which made him feel a sense of kinship. The girl was named Rebecca, and she was brought in by a donkey cart. She looked quite dirty, and according to the letter, the girl was a cousin of Jose's family. For certain reasons, she hoped they could take her in. Ursula's heart softened, and she agreed. However, it wasn't long before she began to regret it. The child was very strange, perhaps shy. She had not spoken a word since arriving, only sitting in a rocking chair, continuously rocking. She often held a burlap bag in her hands, but the things inside made everyone panic. This seemed to be the remains of Rebecca's parents. Ursula, feeling compassionate, took her in as a foster daughter, and she lived with her third daughter Ama. Not long after, strange occurrences began to happen frequently. First, the skeleton in the bag would inexplicably shake. Secondly, the child refused all the food they offered her. Ursula could tolerate the oddities, but wasting food was absolutely unacceptable, so she locked Rebecca in a dark room, to let her reflect on her behavior. Ursula thought this would make her realize her mistakes. 2 days later, Rebecca still showed no signs of remorse, and even at midnight, she snuck into the garden to eat dirt. Ursula thought the dark room was causing the child's issues, so she quickly rushed to stop her. However, Rebecca let out a beast-like roar, and in the end, the whole family had to come together to subdue her. Ursula prepared a potion for the child, hoping to cure Rebecca's symptoms. Just then, the previously silent Rebecca surprisingly spoke.
¿Qué dijo?
Ursula felt a bit conflicted. The good news was that the child wasn't mute, but the bad news was that she was a brat. However, the most urgent matter was to treat Rebecca's habit of eating dirt instead of food. After much effort, Ursula managed to get Rebecca to drink the potion. The effect was immediate, and it was almost too good to be true. Rebecca transformed from a brat into a polite young lady. She changed from a silent mute into a chatterbox. But one night, the household servants discovered that Rebecca was once again sitting in the rocking chair, looking somewhat like she was sleepwalking. They kindly approached to wake Rebecca, but they were nearly scared to death on the spot.
Rebecca.
one of the servants recognized this as a curse known as the insomnia plague. If it wasn't dispelled quickly, everyone would be infected by it. Regarding this claim, the alchemist Jose didn't take it seriously, thinking it was just another tale of a pig-tailed monster.
Pero si fuera cierto y no volviéramos a dormir, mejor. Si no rendiría más la vida.
However, soon everyone in the town paid the price for his arrogance. In just a few days, the insomnia plague infected everyone. The town was lit up all night, and everyone could operate for 24 hours. The town's economy saw rapid growth and improvement. But soon, the drawbacks of insomnia began to surface. People started to show sluggish reactions, and a decline in memory. Although not severe, it was beginning to affect daily life. The second son Yano came up with a solution: to record information about various items on paper. Seeing them later would trigger memories. This was indeed a good idea. So Makondo's corners were filled with notes, but this method could only provide a temporary fix. Before long, the residents' condition continued to worsen. They even began to forget how to read and write. If this continued to deteriorate, they would regress into jungle beasts, and perhaps even less than that, because some people have started to forget their loved ones, and attack those who are close to them. Just as Makondo was on the brink of destruction, an old man arrived. Seeing the dire state of Makondo, he immediately understood it was the effect of the insomnia plague. The old man went to Jose's laboratory, using the drugs there to concoct a potion. Just a spoonful of dosage caused Jose, who had been suffering from insomnia for months, to immediately fall asleep. After that, the old man used the same method, to put all the town's residents into a deep slumber. And this old man was Molara. How he had come back to life is still unknown. But for now, that remains a mystery. However, after that incident, he stayed in the town, so the town gained a photographer. Many years passed, and by this time, Yano was already in his 20s, but he had never had any experience interacting with women. What his brother had said back then had always made him restless. Then he met a girl who had gone astray. Originally, the girl's grandmother was seriously ill, and needed a substantial amount of money for treatment. This left Yano feeling conflicted. In the end, he left behind a large sum of money, and quickly fled the inn. Afterward, Yano felt a persistent unease of conscience. The girl's pitiful expression haunted his mind. Moreover, Yano's special intuition raised alarms, warning him to stay away from women in the future. Yet many things, even if known in advance, would be pursued without hesitation. The beginning of all this was a piano in the house. To nurture the talents of her two daughters, Ursula ordered a piano. Along with it came a professional piano teacher. He was a young and handsome man. Just one glance, and both daughters were smitten. Their mother noticed this situation, and quickly changed the agreed-upon terms. During lessons, the piano teacher had to allow ACA to observe throughout, and during lessons, there could be no physical contact. The piano teacher naturally agreed to the client's requests, but plans often change. As the music began, everyone couldn't help but start dancing. All those previous agreements had long been forgotten. This made Ursula very worried, but Jose thought she was overreacting. In his eyes, the piano teacher looked frail and weak, and couldn't possibly win over the girl's affections. It was this contempt that led to the tragedy that followed. As the agreed-upon time arrived, the day for the piano teacher to leave came. Ursula thought things would end like this, but unexpectedly, the young man left behind a parting remark.
Signora Ursula, grazie per tutto, è stato bellissimo. Prometto regresar.
It was this remark that kept the two daughters constantly thinking about the piano teacher. As a result, the two daughters at the matchmaking dance couldn't find anyone else appealing. Even if they agreed to dance with someone, they imagined them as the piano teacher. But the truth was that the piano teacher wasn't here. Rebecca felt immense sadness, leading to her dirt-eating habit re-emerging. Ursula noticed her daughter's condition, but just as one wave of trouble subsided, another arose. Not long after, a letter was delivered to Jose, stating in the name of the government that the residents of Macondo were to paint their houses in the Conservative Party's blue. This was an attempt to bring the area under their jurisdiction. Jose was very angry that someone wanted to control their lives. Jose brought many able-bodied residents with weapons to protest against the government. In response, a man produced a decree stating that he would be the mayor of Macondo from then on, and that Jose and the others would have to obey him. Upon hearing this news, Jose angrily tore up the decree on the spot, and the residents behind him voiced their discontent as well. In the end, they threw the mayor out. Jose even issued threats against him.
Prefiero cargarlo vivo que tener que cargarlo muerto el resto de mi vida.
However, the mayor didn't take his threats seriously. A few days later, he not only returned again, but also brought his entire family with him. Accompanying them was a contingent of soldiers, clearly prepared to use violence to suppress the troublemakers. As the vehicle passed through the street, Yano spotted at a glance the girl Desiree in the car. This would become a turning point in his life. That glance seemed to steal Yano's soul. He couldn't forget that face, and he had a premonition that he would have many children because of her. This filled Yano with inner conflict. Clearly, the premonition urged him to stay away from women, yet he foresaw such things happening. As a result, he wandered aimlessly each day, dulling his thoughts with alcohol. But when he woke up in a woman's bed, Yano realized something was wrong, and hurriedly got dressed to escape home. He confessed this incident to his parents. When Jose learned that his son had fallen for the mayor's daughter, he felt overwhelmed. He and the mayor had been enemies from the start, and now his son wanted to marry the mayor's daughter, which seemed utterly ridiculous. If it weren't for the relatively harmonious relationship between the two wives, constantly maintaining peace, things would have been tense by now. However, for his son, Jose decided to give it a try. He invited Desiree and her mother to their home under Ursula's name, allowing Yano the opportunity to interact with her. With his goldfish gift, their relationship quickly progressed. In addition, Desiree and Rebecca's relationship also developed rapidly. This was because Desiree brought news of the piano teacher to her. From then on, Desiree became the intermediary between Rebecca and the piano teacher, conveying their passionate feelings for each other. This matter was discovered by the third daughter Amma. The more excited Rebecca was, the more sorrowful Amma felt. This led her to contemplate self-harm multiple times. The various disturbances in the household were noticed by Jose and Ursula, and seeing those mushy letters, Ursula realized they needed to address these matters quickly. Thus, not long after, Jose and Ursula decided to resolve the marriage between their son and Rebecca. The matter with the piano teacher was easy to resolve. As long as they agreed to the marriage, he would voluntarily come to Macondo. The difficult part was Desiree. The mayor didn't object, but had a few additional conditions. First, they had to wait until his daughter came of age. Desiree wasn't yet of childbearing age. This was reasonable, so Jose and Ursula readily agreed. As for the second condition, it was much more complicated. The mayor required that the wedding be officiated by a priest. Macondo had never had religion, and agreeing to this condition would necessitate building a church. Although Jose loved his son, he hesitated on such matters. However, Yano agreed on behalf of his father. Jose was unhappy with this behavior, and planned to consult his friend Malara for a strategy. However, when he saw him, Malara was already on the verge of death. After stating his last wishes, Malara passed away completely. Jose was heartbroken, and asked his grandson Aca to take Mara to the river to clean up, and leave with dignity. However, due to negligence, Aca lost Malara. When Jose and the others found him again, Malara's entrails had already been eaten by crows. Perhaps for this reason, Jose sprinkled mercury as instructed by Malara, but he was unable to come back to life again. Jose finally decided to let go. Malara's funeral was very grand, as he was the first person to die since the establishment of Macondo. Everyone who knew him came to pay their respects. Most people were immersed in sorrow, except for Rebecca and Amma. Because of the piano teacher's return, Rebecca's eyes were now filled with love. Amma saw everything and couldn't help but feel jealousy.
Juro que nunca te vas a casar con mi hermana, así tengas que atravesar en la puerta mi propio cadáver.
When Ursula unexpectedly heard this news, she realized that her daughter's mental state was problematic, so she took Amma out to clear her mind. However, Ursula overlooked her husband, the sudden death of her old friend, along with the sudden disappearance of his wife and daughter, and the fact that his son was always with Desiree, while Rebecca and the piano teacher were inseparable, caused Jose to suddenly go mad. He began to mutter to himself under the illusion that he was trapped on Monday. To escape this loop, Jose overturned his beloved laboratory. In the end, the crazed Jose was restrained by the arriving neighbors, and tied to the large tree in the yard. When Ursula returned, and learned of her husband's condition, she rushed into the yard. Seeing Jose with a vacant stare, she felt a mix of emotions. Finally, Ursula untied Jose's hands and feet to alleviate his discomfort. This was the last thing Ursula could do for him. Jose's condition was soon forgotten by the family. A few days earlier, Desiree suddenly got her period, and according to their agreement, she was soon to marry Yano. Since the church wasn't yet built, the ceremony would be held at home by a priest. Even with only the closest guests, the spacious hall felt very crowded, perhaps because of the many eyes on him. the groom Yano nervously dropped the wedding ring on the floor. This was considered a very bad omen in the area. Yano hurriedly chased after it, and finally caught up with the rolling ring in front of his father Jose. Perhaps this was a divine instruction. From that moment on, Desiree took on the responsibility of caring for Jose. Guests couldn't help but praise Desiree's virtuous character. Only Rebecca was listless, because her beloved piano teacher suddenly received a letter last night. His mother, far away in the capital, was gravely ill and hoped to see him one last time. As a result, the piano teacher left Macondo overnight. However, the piano teacher's mother was actually at the wedding site today, looking lively and sprightly, completely unlike someone who was about to pass away. Clearly, someone was secretly causing trouble. If the piano teacher were here today, Rebecca could have the priest officiate their wedding. Fortunately, that afternoon, the piano teacher returned from the capital. Unfortunately, his mother had left Macondo not long before. The two missed each other again. Rebecca thought it wasn't too late, hoping to marry the piano teacher. However, he stated that he would never marry without his mother present. Thus, Rebecca lost her only chance to marry the piano teacher. And all of this was what Amma had been hoping for. It was all part of her scheme. The letter was forged by Amma. However, these things were so coincidental. Rebecca was no fool, and she soon suspected Amma's involvement. As a result, their relationship completely shattered. Fortunately, with the newly arrived Desiree to mediate, there was no complete explosion of conflict. In addition, Desiree was also attentive to others, making everyone feel her kindness, and never allowing anyone to feel discomfort, even at the cost of her own interests. Not long after Yano's wedding, the fortune teller suddenly appeared at the door again. She wasn't there to see her son ACA, but to bring a new baby. It turned out that Yano had gotten drunk in the tavern, and was found by the fortune teller, and very unfortunately, she was pregnant again. Regarding this child, Yano believed it was a continuation of the family bloodline, and couldn't let it wander outside. However, deciding who would raise it became the biggest challenge. The newly married daughter-in-law Desiree wasn't yet pregnant, and had to take care of someone else's child, which was unfair to her. But Yano insisted on handing the child over to his wife. This made his mother Ursula extremely unhappy. The mother and son even had an argument over it.
La vas a poner a crear un bastardo.
¿Qué dijiste?
In the end, although Yano firmly insisted on his demands, this matter couldn't be decided by him alone. He also needed the mayor's approval. So Yano personally went to speak with the mayor. Unexpectedly, the mayor readily agreed. However, there was one additional condition.
Aunque Dios lo bendiga y esto quede entre nosotros, no creo que haya ningún problema. ¿De acuerdo?
Clearly, his daughter Desiree was merely a political tool for him. Thus, the child was baptized under the priest's supervision, and given the names of ACA and his brother, symbolizing their high hopes for the child. ACA felt extremely envious of this treatment, to the point that at the subsequent banquet, this guy spoke recklessly, causing further division within the Buendia family. At first, it was just an ordinary family dinner, but when Rebecca suggested that she wanted the priest to officiate her wedding, the nature of the banquet gradually changed. Amma was naturally the first to oppose it, but her tactics were very clever. Considering Rebecca's perspective, she suggested waiting until the church was completed for the ceremony, but everyone knew that would take at least a few more years. Rebecca simply couldn't wait that long. Therefore, she questioned everyone, stating that previously in the town, weddings didn't require such complicated rituals. At this moment, ACA spoke the truth with resentment in his heart.
A cuenta de que tú en esta casa se volvieron godos de la noche a la mañana.
His indiscriminate words tore apart the facade that everyone had maintained. This caused Ursula to become furious on the spot. The banquet ended under such a cloud. However, the conflicts within the Buendia family were all seen by the mayor. After the banquet, he immediately invited ACA to join him, and arranged for him to have a position as a principal. Faced with the mayor's enticements, ACA decisively moved out of the family. Also affected by this banquet was Rebecca, who longed to get married. She went to the church construction site every day, hoping it would be finished soon. However, the acceptance of the church in Macondo was very low, and no one was willing to donate. Watching as they were about to halt work due to a lack of funds, Rebecca's heart grew increasingly anxious. So, strange tremors began to occur frequently in the family residence, which led Ursula to track down the source in confusion. She discovered that it was all caused by Rebecca's desires, which made Ursula feel quite troubled, because not long ago, Desiree had become pregnant, and now she needed to rest. But Rebecca was also her daughter. and for a moment Ursula didn't know what to do. As time passed, Desiree's morning sickness became more severe, but due to Rebecca's issues, Desiree's condition worsened. If it wasn't addressed soon, it would lead to unimaginable consequences. Finally, Ursula made up her mind. She found the priest overnight, offering a large sum of money, hoping he would officiate Rebecca's wedding. Even without the church, the priest readily agreed. Upon hearing this news, Rebecca finally stopped getting sick. However, Amma felt uneasy because of this. A bold and malicious idea arose within her. She opened her father Jose's laboratory, and used various chemicals inside, to concoct a poison that even she didn't fully understand, planning to poison Rebecca to stop the wedding, but it was accidentally ingested by Desiree. Yano was heartbroken, and from that moment on, his life changed completely. As for the mastermind, Amma, perhaps out of guilt, she took it upon herself to care for little Yano, as if he were her own kid. Moreover, Yano's current state was clearly not suitable for caring for a child. In the days that followed, the entire family was immersed in sorrow and pain. Only ACA outside was thriving and full of confidence. With his position as principal, he took the opportunity to pursue the parents of the children. However, his target was somewhat special. It was the fortune teller. Knowing this was her own kid, she was very resistant. In the end, she sweet-talked him into saying she would come back at night. ACA immediately agreed. That evening, another young woman opened the door. Of course, ACA didn't mind, and they got intimate anyway. In fact, this woman was the wife his mother had bought for him. So, not long after, ACA married the woman. The scene shifted back to the family. The once silent family suddenly caught a gust of wind. Then, a burly man pushed the door open. This man was ACA, who had run away from home. Seeing her son return, Ursula was moved to tears. However, it wasn't long before Ursula began to regret his return. Because of a chance encounter, Rebecca saw ACA's strong physique, and was immediately captivated by him. So much so that during family meals, she would always stare at ACA, completely ignoring the piano teacher beside her. ACA had long been accustomed to such gazes, and even enjoyed it. Just like those nightclub girls indulging in their pleasures. The more they spent time together, the more Rebecca became infatuated with ACA. So one night, she could no longer hold back, and had an unethical relationship with him. The next day, ACA proposed to his mother that he wanted to marry Rebecca. Faced with Ursula's strong opposition, he actually left home again with Rebecca. Then, he personally went to inform the piano teacher of this news.
Me caso con Rebeca.
Su hermana.
No me importa.
Not long after, the priest officiated the wedding for the two. Since they had no blood relation, their marriage was legal. However, except for Yano and little ACA, no relatives blessed their union. Of course, ACA didn't care. He rented a house next to the cemetery, and casually set up a hammock, which was enough for his living. But the people around him suffered. ACA's domineering personality constantly plundered from those around him. A nearby farmer was robbed of all his land by him. The power disparity was vast, and the farmer had no means to resist. Meanwhile, the piano teacher committed suicide due to various blows. The person who completely despises him was actually Amma. After Rebecca left, she took the initiative to get close to the piano teacher. Under her tenderness, he quickly fell completely for her. In the blink of an eye, the day of discussing marriage arrived. But at this moment, Amma rejected him. The piano teacher thought it was due to his lack of sincerity, so he romantically proposed to her at midnight. The music moved everyone, except for Amma. Just when the piano teacher saw hope, he was kicked back into the depths of despair. At this moment, Amma began to regret it, wanting to use pain to forget all of this. But there is no remedy for regret in this world. Meanwhile, the situation in the entire town was also very tense. As the elections approached, the mayor immediately declared a curfew to win over Yano. The mayor even offered him a choice among his other 6 daughters, to take one as a new wife. But Yano refused. He had no interest in politics to begin with, and didn't want to be involved. However, what happened in Macondo afterwards forced him to get involved. The town's election featured 2 parties, the mayor's Conservative Party, and the doctor's Liberal Party. The doctor had already allied with many heirs of the prominent families in Macondo, including ACA. Their fathers had all participated in building the town, so their hearts leaned toward freedom, making them natural allies of the doctor. These people used medicine bottles as symbols of identity, and gave speeches every night at the school.
Desde su fundación, este ha sido un pueblo libre e igualitario. Por eso hay que
under their promotion. In the upcoming ballots, almost all were for the Red Liberal Party. The remaining votes for the Conservative Party mostly came from people like Yano, who had no choice. Regarding this outcome, the mayor waved his hand, and a thick stack of blue ballots appeared on the table. In the end, the Conservative Party won the election by an absolute majority. This enraged the doctor's supporters. Soon after, they heard that in other areas, many liberals had started resisting, and the conservatives were slaughtering liberals. Therefore, the doctor prepared to launch a revolution. However, before that, he needed to deal with the conservative mayor first. The doctor found Yano and invited him to join the revolution. Although Yano didn't approve of the conservatives, he still couldn't bring himself to personally kill his father-in-law's family. Thus, he decisively declined the invitation. Without his assistance, the failure of the doctor and his supporters was already inevitable. That night, a large group of conservative soldiers arrived in Macondo. The doctor, as the leader, was publicly executed, shouting "Long live the revolution" as he bravely met his end. However, these soldiers clearly had no intention of leaving just like that. Soon after, the school was transformed into a military base, and the entire city was placed under military control. The leader changed from the mayor to a captain. These foreign soldiers didn't show mercy towards the residents of the town. Any sign of defiance would result in the execution of the townspeople. Yano witnessed everything, and he realized deeply that he could no longer allow these people to continue. So he joined the Liberal Party. He rallied many young people to storm the school and seized their weapons, executing those murderous soldiers. Overnight, Macondo became a city of the liberals. Although Yano didn't kill the mayor, he stripped him of his power and handed it over to his nephew ACA. He then proclaimed himself a colonel, leading 29 companions to other liberal battlefields. In the days that followed, Yano fought across the country. Wherever there was smoke from battle, he always charged at the front lines. With this bravery, Yano achieved multiple victories, but during one occasion, in a mission to rescue other liberal colonels, Yano suffered a disastrous defeat. His men were nearly annihilated, and only he rushed out of the encirclement. Yano wanted to seek reinforcements to take revenge, but in the vast wetlands and swamps, it was not easy at all to locate the positions of the other liberal forces. Eventually, he collapsed from exhaustion. However, Yano didn't die there. He was rescued by a farmer woman. Coincidentally, the farmer woman was also a supporter of the liberals, and had helped many liberals before. With the farmer woman's help, Yano successfully met with other liberal forces, and, with their assistance, took his revenge. However, those companions had completely left him. This event had a profound impact on Yano, almost completely changing his mindset.
Este gobierno de porquería tiene que caer. Pero es más importante rescatar al pueblo hasta la última gota de sangre que hayan derramado los nuestros.
Compared to Yano's awakening, ACA, who remained in Macondo, had been completely corrupted by power. He not only repeated the old path of the captain, but also treated ordinary people even more harshly. Farmers whose lands had been seized by ACA came to him for justice, but he not only refused to champion their cause, instead used property registration forms to help ACA legitimize the stolen goods. In addition, he imposed heavier taxes on all trades, and the people dared not voice their anger. The only trumpeter who spoke out was ordered to be killed on the spot by ACA. In the end, he even crazily attempted to defy Yano's orders and forcibly kill the mayor. Grandmother Ursula came out to stop him and nearly got shot by his men, until Ursula revealed that shocking news.
¡Aureliano está muerto!
ACA finally calmed down. He then left the scene. Ursula's bravery earned her the admiration of the crowd, but had Yano really died? The answer was no. Not long after, a mysterious woman arrived in Macondo, requesting to see ACA. She was a disguised liberal soldier, here to convey Yano's orders, demanding that ACA prepare to surrender immediately. A conservative army would soon come to attack Macondo, and they would be equipped with heavy weaponry. However, just recently, ACA had just heard the news of Yano's death, and immediately assumed she was a spy for the conservatives. He ordered her to be captured and detained. Even when she presented evidence, a goldfish ornament, ACA still didn't believe her. After all, this item had sold at least 1,000 pieces before Yano's revolution, and wasn't sufficient as evidence. However, just after ACA had imprisoned her, the conservative army arrived in Macondo. They came with cannons and machine guns, and the sturdy buildings were instantly demolished. The resisting militia were instantly killed. As ACA watched his guards die under the cannon fire, he finally believed what the previous person had said. He hurried to free her, hoping she could help him. facing the invading conservatives. The woman said little, and immediately picked up a weapon to fight the enemy. With his precise marksmanship, he continuously shot dead conservative soldiers. This action completely enraged the enemy, and the woman was immediately blasted to death by cannon fire. At this point, ACA wanted to escape, but it was already too late. Moreover, he had committed numerous evils, and now no residents were willing to help him hide. In a panic, he returned to the house he had left, thus leading the conservative pursuers to the house. Ursula used her frame to protect her family behind her. Perhaps in that final moment, she finally awakened. Or perhaps it was to protect her family from being implicated. ACA voluntarily stepped away from Ursula's protection, and was willing to bear all consequences. The conservative soldiers took him to the cemetery, and allowed him to say his last words.
¡Cabrones! ¡Que viva el Partido Liberal! ¡Fuego!
ACA's story came to an end, but the story of the Buendia family continued. Not long after, Llano, who was fighting outside, was also defeated and captured, and would be escorted back to Macondo for execution. The people in the town saw the captured colonel come to visit, but were stopped by the captain who opened fire. However, their violent rule couldn't deter Ursula's determination to see her son. After some twists and turns, the mother and son met again after many years, both showing the marks of time. Ursula told her son about the changes in the family during his absence, especially regarding ACA's children. The eldest daughter was named after his wife, also called Desiree, and the twins born after ACA's death were named Llano II and ACA II. However, Llano had already foreseen this news, but there was one thing he still didn't understand: why he couldn't sense death. Nevertheless, he prepared a last will, which was more like a love letter to his deceased wife Desiree. Every stroke and line inside revealed his endless longing for her. Even Ursula was moved by it, but there was nothing she could do. However, that night, a turn of events occurred. While the captain was at the tavern, those nightclub girls kept their distance from him. In addition, the fortune teller revealed a thought-provoking piece of news.
Que el oficial que fusile al coronel Aureliano Buendía, por uno, serán asesinados sin remedio, tarde o temprano.
Perhaps the captain was truly intimidated by the fortune teller. He immediately stated that he also wanted to help Llano, but he was a soldier, and had to obey orders from above. And it was this statement that sparked some thoughts in Rebecca. Not long after, the captain took Llano to the cemetery for execution according to orders. According to regulations, he could also have his last words. However, Llano had already left all his words in that letter. He merely recalled his life quickly in his mind. Seeing that Llano had no last words to leave, the captain ordered the execution to proceed, but for some reason, the execution soldiers were unwilling to act. Perhaps it was out of admiration for the colonel, or maybe it was due to the fortune teller's intimidation. Just as the captain was in a dilemma, ACA and his wife Rebecca stormed the execution site with guns. With this reason, the colonel immediately ordered his men to release Llano, and declared his willingness to submit to Llano. Just like that, ACA wasn't only unharmed, but even gained the strength to make a comeback. A year after Llano's departure, ACA and Rebecca also left the cemetery. They moved into Little ACA's vacant house. After he was executed, Little ACA's wife moved into the family estate with her children, living together with Ursula and others. However, whether it was the price of saving someone or not, ACA was inexplicably shot dead on the first day he moved in. A strange stream of blood flowed along the ground through the town, and eventually reached the family estate, coming to a stop at Ursula's feet. As the saying goes, a mother and child share a bond. She immediately sensed something was wrong. Ursula followed the trail of blood, only to find ACA, who was already dead. There were no signs of the killer at the scene, so pursuing the culprit was out of the question. At the moment of ACA's death, Llano, who was thousands of miles away, also sensed the news. A loved one had left once again. Though he was grief-stricken, it wasn't as intense as before, because Llano knew that as long as the order didn't change, this sorrow would never cease. Holding on to this thought, in the negotiations that followed, ACA rejected the temptation of benefits from others, insisting on fighting for the interests of the people, until the people achieved true freedom. He also earnestly practiced those promises. Whenever there was injustice, Llano would suddenly strike with his soldiers, to eliminate all those oppressors. As his reputation grew, Llano's followers increased in number, forming a force of thousands. They revolted for the people's freedom, often assassinating various conservative officials, while always managing to escape safely. For a time, the conservatives trembled at the name of ACA, even placing a huge bounty on him. However, this didn't deter Llanos' actions. He then boldly declared that if the liberals bowed to the conservatives, they too would face their wrath. The direct result of this was that many liberals ostracized him. Before long, an assassin entered the room intending to kill Llano. However, with years of combat experience, Llano easily subdued the attacker. After this incident, his fame grew even more. Followers from all over the country supported him as the supreme commander of the Caribbean Revolutionary Army, and referred to Llano as a general, but he accepted the title but declined the name. ACA claimed that as long as people had not achieved freedom, he would always be the colonel fighting on the front lines. This attitude led to more assassination attempts against him. However, these were merely stepping stones for Llano, only making him more resolute. In addition, his attitude earned the respect of his enemies, although General Moncada was officially a conservative. In private, he was in a sense a confidant of Llano. They shared common ideals, but chose different methods. The two often exchanged ideas, but this was likely their last meeting. General Moncada received orders to go to Macondo as the mayor, and thus came to bid farewell to Llano, while advising him to stand down. The flames of war had burned for 10 years, and they had both seen clearly that whether liberal or conservative, they were essentially no different. They were not worth Llano's sacrifices. Llano naturally understood this truth, but for the anger in his heart, he couldn't let go so easily.
Y pelearemos 10 años más o lo que hagan falta para que sea el pueblo el que decida su suerte. Estamos mamados de que decidan por nosotros.
Seeing that he couldn't persuade the other party, Moncada said no more. Soon after, he arrived in Macondo. The first thing he did was visit Ursula. Upon learning about her relationship with her son, Ursula was very warm and welcoming. She took him on a tour of the entire town. Moncada also promised her that he would protect the town well. In the days that followed, Moncada truly kept his promise, and devoted himself wholeheartedly to the development of Macondo. He actually managed to develop it into a prosperous city. However, beneath this flourishing surface, there was a new undercurrent brewing. Within the Buendia family estate, a scene of moral violation was replayed. Llano's illegitimate son had fallen in love with his Aunt Ama, and taking advantage of the moment, she went to the warehouse for something. He planned to force their relationship to a deeper level. Fortunately, at this moment, Ursula's arrival timely interrupted little Llano's plans, but this feeling of unfulfilled desire left him restless every day. As a result, little ACA seized every opportunity to get close to his Aunt Ama. Even during Mayor Moncada's speeches, he was unafraid. However, Ama always intentionally avoided him, which only stimulated little Llano further. So one night, he went to Amara's room. This time, no one would disturb them. However, at this moment, Ama's reason triumphed over her desire, and she clearly stated that it was impossible for them. Little ACA was heartbroken. He couldn't believe this was real, and he planned to threaten her by running away from home. But in the end, he didn't receive Ama's consent. In a fit of anger, he actually packed his bags and ran away from home. Ama watched his departing figure, feeling both lost and helpless. However, his departure didn't draw much attention from Ursula, because the next day, she received a letter from her son Llano. The letter mentioned that Jose was about to pass away. Ursula knew of her son's prophetic abilities, and since he had said so, her husband must be nearing death. She released Jose from the tree, and helped him back into the house to let him rest well. However, Jose couldn't fall asleep. He wanted to go out for a stroll, but suddenly found himself in another time and space. In this place, he saw little Llano seeking refuge with his father, and he also saw his deceased friend Mela. In addition, there was the unfortunate fellow he had killed over a cockfight. At this moment, they finally reconciled. The two stepped together into the infinite starry sky. With Jose's passing, the sky suddenly began to rain down yellow flowers, like yellow snowflakes. The flowers fell for a day and a night, and the entire Macondo was covered in blossoms. The procession for Jose passed through this dense sea of flowers, forever burying him in this eternal place he had created with his own hands. As time passed, many years had gone by since Jose's death. The atmosphere in Macondo grew tense once again, and the reason was that Llano had returned, and he had brought thousands of soldiers with him. Moncada received orders to hold Macondo at all costs, and a brutal battle was imminent. Ursula didn't want to see the smoke of war rise again, so she took the initiative to go to the military camp outside the city, to persuade her son to leave voluntarily. However, at this point, Llano had undergone tremendous changes. Years of warfare had made him extremely cold-blooded. In order to achieve the freedom in his heart, he was willing to shatter the peace and reignite the flames of war in his hometown. In the end, he took action. Ursula finally realized that the film was coming to an end. 100 Years of Solitude, released in December 2024, adapted from the famous novel of the same name. It can be said to be one of the most exciting films of the year. By the end of the film, only about half of the content had been filmed, compared to the original work. Some minor adaptations were inevitably necessary. However, the adaptations were not distracting, but rather gave a natural feeling. It was very enjoyable to watch. I recommend everyone to watch the original and savor it carefully. If you like my channel, please click to subscribe.